Move the chains.
Welcome to the EndZone YouTube. Let's move the chains. And we're going to talk about the quarterback rooms in the United Football League. I want you to comment down below your top quarterback rooms in the league and some guys that you're excited to see. So first part of this video, and by the way, this is unscripted. It's kind of my gut feeling. That's what I want this to be. The first part is we're going to go over each team's quarterback room. And then the second part, I'm going to do a quick gut feeling ranking. So let's go ahead and get it started. And we're going to talk about the Arlington Renegades, one that returns one of the top passers in the entire spring football environment. It's Luis Perez returning for the Arlington Renegades, a huge get for Arlington, one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and really for spring football since like the Birmingham Iron, since the Alliance of American Football. He's been a regular. And then there's some new faces in the room. Now, Holton Ahlers is returning to the Arlington Renegades, coming out of East Carolina. He will be competing, but this is Luis Perez's job to keep. And then Luke Lennon. So Luke Lennon is an interesting one because he's a Division III quarterback coming in from North Central College. And when you say, well, a guy like Luke Lennon is at a disadvantage because he doesn't come from an NCAA Division I school, FBS or FCS, but you look at the starting quarterback of this team, he's Division II in Luis Perez coming from East Texas A&M, right? So I think that this is the league of opportunity, and it's a good opportunity for Luke Lennon, even if he doesn't secure that starting position or even make the cut, depending on how many quarterbacks they decide to keep on their roster. It's still a good opportunity for him to get some of that pro experience. But Luis and Holton already have that pro experience coming in, and I think that this is a solid ground quarterback room, especially when you have a guy like Luis Perez returning. Now we're going over to the Houston Roughnecks, Nolan Henderson, Jalen McClendon, and Davius Richards. So I expect Henderson to be the guy going into the season, but I think that this could be an open quarterback competition. And one interesting thing about this room is they all have something in similar that they're all mobile quarterbacks, right? And I think that's important for Houston, given that their offensive line struggled last season. They're going to have a guy who can move the pocket. And all three of these guys have done that. We know that Nolan Henderson is returning, and he had a pretty decent season considering the circumstances for how poor Houston played last year. Jalen McClendon coming in. He's another spring football regular with the LA Wildcats and then also the Vipers in the XFL 2023. And I was actually extremely surprised and excited to see him play for the Vipers. I thought he did a good job, again, on a bad team, with what he was given, with what was around him. And then there's Davius Richard coming from the HBCU ranks. He's got a lot of great stats to back up how good he was in college. I'm excited to see him compete, but this is another quarterback room that I think they're at a unique position because all of these guys are mobile quarterbacks. Now we move on to the Birmingham Stallions, and one unique thing about the Stallions is these are all championship caliber quarterbacks. If any of these guys take over the starting role, I'd be comfortable with them because they've all been on teams that have won championships for the Stallions. And that's what's pretty cool about this roster. You've got Jamar Smith, Alex Magoo, guys who were in the USFL version of the Stallions, and then Matt Corral, who is a UFL version of the Stallions. It's really wild that this roster, outside of the quarterback position, is just so talented, and now they're starting to bring guys in. That's something that we're seeing for a lot of these good teams, is that they're bringing guys back, people who are familiar with the system. And here you've got three quarterbacks who are familiar with the system. And Alex Magoo just re-signed. I think a lot of people are assuming that he's going to be the starting quarterback, and I think I'm one of those people. However, I'll say this, Matt Corral and Jamar Smith, they're competitors, and they're really talented, and they've been with Skip Holtz. They know what the system is. They've been around a lot of these players, and they're extremely good quarterbacks. So I don't necessarily think it's a given, but whoever is the starter with this offense, I think, is in good hands. Moving on to the Memphis Showboats, a new look Showboats team coming into the season with a new coach and everything, but Troy Williams is a returning quarterback. He had a sort of a disappointing season along with this entire roster last year. However, I think he's talented. He showed more promise with the Pittsburgh Maulers when he took them to the championship. And Quentin Dormady is kind of one of those guys who showed a lot of promise along with Troy Williams. Quentin Dormady with the Orlando Guardians and then the San Antonio Brahmas. He came in for Chase Garbers when Garbers was injured. And while he didn't play perfect, he played pretty well at times. And I think that this is a roster that has a lot of promise in the quarterback room, right? Maybe the floor isn't as high, but there's a possibility for a higher ceiling. So I'm excited to see what comes out of Memphis here. Moving on to a team, speaking of high ceilings, I think that the St. Louis Battlehawks could possibly have the highest ceiling quarterback room in the entire league. A lot of people think that Max Duggan is going to be the guy coming in, but we've heard from Anthony Beck that this is an open competition and every guy's got a shot. And I think Chavin Cordero is someone who is maybe more underrated because maybe people haven't heard as much about him when he played at Hawaii and then San Jose State. I think he's really talented, and he's someone who you should keep an eye on. And then there's Manny Wilkins. He's the returning guy, someone who's extremely talented and can use his legs. And this battle is probably, I think, them and Michigan, and we'll cover Michigan in a moment, two quarterback rooms to look at where you're talking about this is going to be a fun camp battle. I'm very excited to see how this plays out. Okay, here are the DC Defenders, and to me, this room scares me a little bit. But, I do see the promise. Jordan Teamu is someone who's going to have to step up this year. He's been a spring football staple. He's always one of the top quarterbacks in the league. But DC, again, they had a massive step back from last season. I don't think that should all be on Jordan Teamu's shoulders. I think that there was more than, just Jordan Teamu that led to a disappointing season for the DC Defenders. But they've also got Mike DeLeo. He's coming in, and he's a guy who played for Austin Peay. So FCS quarterback, Walter Payton Award finalist. So he's very talented, and these are two very talented quarterbacks who are going to come in to DC in an offense that we expect to be much better and to make some more improvements. But when you've got a guy and a playmaker like Jordan Teamu at the helm at the quarterback position, we've seen what he can do. So I expect him to take a step forward this season. The Michigan Panthers, I've mentioned them already. They and the St. Louis Battlehawks, to me, have the most loaded top to bottom quarterback rooms, and then also the Birmingham Stallions. But I think that this is going to be a competition that I cannot wait to watch. Bryce Perkins, EJ Perry, Danny Etling, and then you bring in Rocky Lombardi. What a phenomenal name. A Northern Illinois guy coming in, but Bryce Perkins, so I think, and I've said this a couple of times, I think that if Bryce Perkins is starting at the end of the season, is not injured, I think Michigan has a real shot to win the entire UFL. And then you have EJ Perry, right? So EJ Perry was a guy who may have not been the prettiest quarterback in terms of how he played the game, sort of a physical runner, and then also a thrower of the football where you look at it and maybe you say it's not the prettiest ball, but dang, he gets the ball in the right spot and he wins games. And then Danny Etling, someone who stepped in, and I think he made the most of what he could given his situation, and unfortunately falling short, but had a lead against Birmingham, just couldn't get it all together. I think Bryce Perkins is the QB1 for this team, but new guys coming in. You got Rocky Lombardi, who is a competitor, and then EJ Perry and Danny Etling. This one is going to be fun, and I think if you're Michigan and you're a Michigan fan, you're excited because you've already seen that, okay, if we have an injury, we can depend on these backups. We can depend on the second and even third string guy to come in and help us win football games. Finally, we have the San Antonio Brahmas with a quarterback coming in, Kellen Mond, who I think has, just based off reading on social media, outside of Alex Magoo, because that was very recent, but a new guy coming in to this UFL scene. I think a lot of people are excited about Kellen Mond and what he can do. He had so much hype coming out of college, going to the Vikings. I think a lot of people thought that he would eventually earn a roster spot with Minnesota. It didn't end up happening. but I think that he's got a great shot. Him along with Max Duggan, I should also say, have gotten a lot of hype. And there's Kevin Hogan, someone who's staying with the Brahmas from last year, so he's sort of a holdover. Not much playing time, but still someone who has familiarity with the system in San Antonio, and I think that this is going to be a good quarterback room. So let's go ahead and look at the rankings, and this is really my gut ranking, and honestly, you could change up these numbers. You could argue for one team to be ranked above the others, but Birmingham, all three are championship contenders. It's hard to compete with that. St. Louis, you've got some star power and then some talent power and underrated players. I think Cordero is extremely underrated and not getting talked about enough in what he can do. But then you've got Max Duggan, a Heisman finalist, right? And then Manny Wilkins, who has familiarity with the system. So you've got a little taste of everything in St. Louis. Michigan, I think having their depth tested last season will help them this season, because if you have an injury at the quarterback position, you know that you're really not going to lose much sleep over it because of the guys behind, and then you bring in Rocky Lombardi, but Bryce Perkins, who I think is going to be that quarterback one, I think he's going to be phenomenal this season. I cannot wait to watch him. Arlington, when you're returning a guy like Luis Perez, to me, this quarterback room may not be as deep as the others listed above. However, Luis Perez is just so good. And when you have him on your team and on your offense, you can win the championship, and that's exactly what Luis Perez has done. Despite a poor defense last year, he kept them in a lot of games. San Antonio coming in at number 5. I think Kellen Mond has the opportunity to raise this bar in San Antonio and win a championship, so I'm excited to see him. 6, DC. I mean, right now, only 2 guys on the quarterback room roster, and Jordan Teamu, I'm looking for him to take a step forward this season and be that real difference maker in DC. For Memphis, it's a lot of uncertainty, but I've seen that talent. I've seen Troy Williams play well. I've seen Quentin Dormady play well at times as well. So for me, there's a little bit of uncertainty of who takes over and how consistent that might be, but I still think that there's promise in that room. And then there's Houston, and part of Houston's thing is, well, the team around them scares me a little bit, but you could switch Houston and Memphis. One thing I'm excited about Houston, though, for is really that mobility at the quarterback position. Nolan Henderson, Jalen McClendon, and Davius Richard, they can all move the ball with their legs, and I think that's something that's super exciting for this Houston teams. Last time they had a really good mobile quarterback was PJ Walker, and he was extremely exciting. So I can't wait to watch this league play out. I can't wait to watch how these rosters play out too, because this isn't the end of it. These rooms are going to change up. They're going to shake up, but I wanted to talk about the quarterback rooms because I'm excited for this league to start, and it was just something I wanted to check up on. And I want to see what y'all are thinking down below. Thanks for watching the EndZone. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment so we can move the chains.